Oh, wait. First, let's look at the rapid development of railroads. Here in 1830, almost no railroads in the United States. In 1840, the network is developing. Couple lines in the south, lots of lines in the northeast, and that trend continues. By 1850, we have a couple major rail lines in the south, a lot going on here in the Midwest, and a very dense network developing here in the Northeast. This is where all the industrialization is happening. This is very rapid change. The industrial and transportation revolutions drive migration and urbanization. Now, you need to get the title of this slide, and you'll want to note the main points. You actually don't need to write these two lines. These are to help you interpret these two maps. Right, what we got here is the U.S. in 1820. Notice how settlement is still clustered in the original 13 colonies and some settlement in the upper Ohio River Valley. Green here means sparsely populated, right? Sort of just farming communities. When you get to the light purple and the dark purple, we've got like towns and cities developing. Or dense farming areas. Probably for the lavender, let's call that dense farming area as opposed to dark purple towns and cities. And, not a lot of urban centers outside the Northeast. Here is 1860. Now American settlement has spread west beyond the Mississippi River. You've even got some pockets of settlement, out west. We'll talk more about that next week. But look at how densely populated the Northeast is now and how few urban centers there are in the South. I mean, you've got Andrew Jackson's Nashville, you've got Charleston, South Carolina, and it's hard to see, but there is a dot down there for New Orleans, Louisiana. So Americans are responding in a couple different ways. One, they're moving west to claim new farmland on the frontier. They can farm more of it now because of the cotton gin and the mechanical reaper. And two, Americans are moving to towns and cities because the Industrial Revolution, the opening of factories, is making jobs available in those places. All of this adds up to something called the market revolution, right? Market revolution summarizes the transformation of the American economy in the early 1800s. You've got a shift from subsistence agriculture to commercial agriculture. Before the market revolution, most Americans were farmers, but they were pretty poor. They were subsistence farmers. They grew enough food to feed their families, and not much more than that. But now, because the transportation revolution has made it possible to deliver crops to market. By now, after the market revolution, most Americans are involved in commercial agriculture. They can grow enough food to feed their families, easy, and they have surplus. They have extra crops to sell. Also, the market revolution has moved most Americans out of a barter economy and into a cash economy. Now, a barter economy is when you're just trading stuff with people, right? Like you got, a guy who owns chickens and needs corn, so he goes to the corn farmer and trades some eggs for some corn so he can feed his chickens, which works great if the corn farmer needs eggs. But what if he has his own chickens? Well, now the guy's out of luck, right? That's why cash is so brilliant, right? In a barter economy, trade is limited because you have to find somebody who needs what you've got before you can get what you need. And in a cash economy, anything you have to sell can be converted to cash, and you can use that cash to buy anything else. Where did this cash economy come from? Well, it came from banks. There were not very many banks in the U.S. in the 1700s, but in the late 1700s, Alexander Hamilton and George Washington fire up the first bank of the United States, and some private and state banks get going too. So there are some banks available to print reliable paper money. There's a brief crisis when the first Bank of the U.S.'s charter lapses, but then Henry Clay boots up the second Bank of the United States, and again, um, we have a decent banking system enabling Americans to participate in a cash economy. The third major shift in the market revolution is a shift from household production. That is, before the market revolution, most people made what they needed at home. People, women, for example, spent much of their lives spinning cloth and then making clothes because they couldn't afford to buy clothes. But because of the Industrial Revolution, clothes are cheaper now. Factories are cranking out, pretty good, pretty cheap clothes. And because people are practicing commercial agriculture and they're in a cash economy, it's more convenient to buy these manufactured cloth and clothing than it is to do it yourself at home now. So these are big shifts, the market revolution. And so far you might be thinking, dude, this is all good, right? Rapidly growing economy, industrial revolution, transportation revolution, market revolution. What's there to complain about? And, you're right. There is a major upside to all of this, and that major upside is Americans are enjoying a higher standard of living. Before the market revolution, Americans were living in log cabins with dirt floors and not much in the way of creature comforts in their homes. After the market revolution, more and more Americans living in proper houses, bigger houses. They've got some decent furniture. Before the market revolution, Americans were reasonably well fed. After the market revolution, they're extremely well fed. So quality of life materially is improved by the market revolution. But money isn't everything. And there are some side effects, right? As towns and cities are growing in the United States, so too are, the downsides of town and city living, namely crime, alcohol abuse, prostitution. Americans are worried about that. A lot of Americans share Thomas Jefferson's view that cities are unhealthy places, that rural living is best, that cities are sores on the body politic. Also, the market revolution is driving a cotton boom, which deepens the South's addiction to slavery and motivates Indian removal, the violation of treaties to get Indians off valuable cotton real estate. Now, Americans in the West and the South, they're totally feeling all that, especially Southern Americans. But Americans in the Northeast are troubled by breaking treaties. They're troubled by the South's increasing addiction to slavery. But more than anything else, what really alienates a lot of Americans at this time is the disruption to families and communities. Right? Americans are becoming a highly mobile people. And it's hard, we remain a highly mobile people, so it's hard for us to understand why anybody ever had a problem with this, but here goes. For most of human history, people lived their entire lives in the same communities where their parents and grandparents and distant ancestors lived their entire lives. So, during the market revolution, people are moving out west or moving into towns and cities, they're leaving their home communities. They're leaving their families behind. They're leaving their churches behind. Parents are heartbroken when their kids move away. Back then there weren't retirement benefits typically, so they're thinking, who's going to take care of me when I get old? And so, while the rapid economic growth and higher standard of living is a major upside, there are significant downsides, and religious Americans are increasingly worried about them. I mean, everyone's worried, but evangelical Christians have a sort of solution coming. And that solution